All right, here we are. Uh, Light of the World review. So I'm going to try to go a little faster because I still want this to be under like 30 minutes. And I think I was going a little slow. Um, First off, I'm not going to get into things that relate to issues that I have personally theologically, mainly because they're minor, at least within this film, and they're just not concerns of this film. Whether or not they should be concerns of this film is another question entirely, but I'm not worried about deep theological issues because overall I think they still did a pretty good job with most of them, and there's nothing horribly offensive. Or if I could take offense, I would have to pick it apart and also know the minds of the theology of the people made it, because there's nothing blatantly like where I go, like, that's clearly not scripture. It's more just, I'm not sure quite what your perspective is in this exact instance, but um, there's nothing that made me overly concerned theologically. And it's also trying to present the gospel on a basic level for mostly unbelievers and kids. And I think overall it balances pretty well. Again, I can nitpick it, but I don't want to do that here, especially since I'm recommending you go see it anyway. This is an independent project too, which is also why I'm kind of supporting this too. If this were almost big budget as The Chosen has either gotten, or like something like King of Kings, which had a lot of money behind it and clearly had like they had like voice actors like Ken Branagh, Jeff Jacoby, all those sorts of stuff, and it's kind of weird seeing their names up, and there's definitely way more money in behind that. And again, I'm not saying either of those going to take any of those projects apart right now, because I haven't really watched them, but um, I much prefer this because it's completely independent. Salvation is poem. Salvation poem is what it's called. Is the only name attached to this project, and so because they did overall a great job, and I'm not concerned about meddling influences on this film. Um, I'm suggesting wholeheartedly you go see this movie. Um, and like I did with my previous thing, I think it really captures a lot of those opening lines of John. It's really trying to bring the words of John, those opening words about Jesus being the light, to uh, an audience. And I hope that there are some Christians, I mean non-Christians, who see this, and children. So this is a great introduction for your child. I'm going to recommend this as one of the better uh, easy introductions to Jesus while still maintaining a lot of power to it. So it's really really nice. Again, this is a 2D animated film, which is also why I'm recommending this, because it may not be the most elaborate 2D. I think it still doesn't quite have the money behind it as Disney did, like when they were doing hand drawn 20, 30 years ago. But that's kind of irrelevant, and it still looks amazing, still looks wonderful. And I'm going to get into details on that. Just some basic, uh, overall, just in terms of your concerns or questions I have in its presentation of the narrative, John. Um, there might be concerns about its depictions and its focus. I think this movie could have been 15, 20 minutes longer and been a benefit. I think there's some things that kind of rushes a bit. But that's, I think, partially just time and money constraints. This is already $20 million, which is, considering this is a fully independent project, is actually pretty good. And to do a hand-drawn movie where you do another 10, 20 minutes is quite hard. It's not an easy task. So doing even there was a friend, uh, Aaron Blaze, who had come out with a short on polar bears. Took him 2 3 years to do that by him, just by himself, pretty much, and it was 11 minutes. 3 years doing 11 minutes. I mean, that's a long time. And so this already has quite a budget and quite a production behind it. And considering getting fully independent, um, it's an achievement. So I'm not going to be concerned about that either. Um, in terms of what they were able to cram in terms of the story drop. Um, other concerns might be its depiction of Jesus and the disciples. Again, this is a bit more loose and it's a bit more relying on, of course, some modern sensibilities, but nothing that really bothered me the way I saw from the little I saw of The Chosen, where I was like, really? It was more very clearly aimed at kids while not overindulging in weird kind of drama. It still has dramatic point with some of the main disciples, but it's nothing that I would call offensive or weird or just like, huh? Like even if it was, even if the choice is biblical, it's gonna throw people, nothing to throw people off that wouldn't have read it or something. And this one isn't trying to be too modern with its sensibilities. It's only modern in that it's trying to communicate the general gospel to unbelievers and non-Christians who may not know any of this stuff at all. So I'm not overly concerned about that. Do I wish for more kind of faithful version where we get a bit more Jewishness? Yeah, but there's nothing here. And the story they tell, especially with James and John, Peter and Andrew, there's nothing especially um, poignant. I did like what they especially did with um, Andrew, um, even though John's the main character. Um, John was fine, but I really like Andrew just because they clearly read the descriptions of Andrew being kind of like the looking for the Messiah, and so they really took that to the nth degree with him, but in a fun way and nothing that was offensive. So I thought that was really good. And then Jesus, same kind of thing, where I'm like, there's nothing here, unlike The Chosen, where I'm like, are you going too far with it? And yes, Jesus is a bit more fun in this version, but there's nothing in it where I went, that's out of line. That's something I can never picture Jesus doing or saying. And there's some bits of Jesus showing real gravitas that are really, really great. So the fun little moments are really well balanced with the dramatic, unlike The Chosen, where I don't think those, from what I've seen, and maybe I'm being too judgmental, but for reasons of my own, I've not really seen The Chosen. But this one I think balances it much better than what I've seen from The Chosen, because in terms of its depiction of Jesus, this one I'm much more happy with. So those are kind of some concerns or little things. I think the one issue I had was at the very end when they do the resurrection and they have the ascension of Jesus, which again was also a little short and cut for time, but it does more than most versions do. Definitely does more than King of Kings does. Definitely does more than some of the other live action versions have done, where it kind of feels like you're rushing. Why are you rushing? So considering the time strengths of this movie, which is an hour and 24, they actually did more strangely with the resurrection, at least in terms of percentage, than some other Jesus films, which I liked. And which I liked. But the my main issue was at the Ascension. Um, immediately after Jesus ascends, they have the Holy Spirit. And I understand why this is done because they want to transition to presenting gospel message. But I thought this was a little off. But I understand why they did it, especially with what John's father represents in the film. Again, nothing wrong with John's father, and they were using it to spread the gospel. I thought was really nice. But again, that's not quite. It's not in John, and so it 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 bothered me a little. That was my only complaint. I'd much if I had done this, it would have been an older John coming up. It would flash forward to an older John writing, uh, finishing the book of John and saying the words. And these were written so that you may believe, and then presenting a gospel message. Um, but I think it's because of the way they set it up with John's father. They wanted him to go through that arc, and that was fine. But that's something I much rather preferred. Uh, so now to the really great stuff. The visuals in this are really good. Again, it's on 20 million budget, hand drawn, independently made. There are some things that are just not going to be possible in a hand drawn film of this budget, but it still does things very well. And I think they wanted to do dramatic stuff with certain scenes, so that's why some of the other stuff is not as big, because they wanted to focus on the big moments. And the big moments are really good. Um, the animation for Peter walking on water, the animation for Jesus being anointed by the Holy Spirit when he's baptized, really great. Those are the two standout bits. And then also when Jesus dies, and I don't want to spoil it in this version, but they do something really clever, that I was like, wow. And what I liked about this movie is that despite its problems in terms of being very generic, at times with its overall plot and pacing. Um, there are details where you can tell, um, they are paying attention to certain things. And the big dramatic moment at the end at Jesus's death is like really great. It's really amazing. I actually loved it. I thought that was um, pretty good. Well, actually, great. Sorry. So the so I and so yeah, John being the main character was fine. Again, they're presenting it as a kid would in kind of modern context. So I thought John was fine. Jesus was, uh, despite some of the slightly silly bits, uh, they have with him and showing him human. There's some really great stuff with the way the actor acts. And from again, I can't say for certain with King of Kings, who which is also animated. But from the little like grass, they got a really dramatic actor to play Jesus, and while that's fine, you got to make sure it doesn't come across as stiff. And this guy comes across as dramatic and very emotional all at the same time, and he's very, very good. That's because the biggest praise I actually want to offer on this film is partially due to the independent budget. But the biggest praise I want to offer is they did spend their money wisely when it came to actors. They did not spend their budget on trying to uh, hire very large actors, partially because they didn't have the budget. But they could have. They could have hired someone much bigger, but they didn't. Instead, they're much smaller actors, and most of them are voice actors, and you can tell. The voice acting overall, is really good. John being the youngest, he's a young actor. I'm gonna cut him slack, but everyone else really, really good. Uh, uh, guys playing Caiaphas is really good. The guy playing Jesus, amazing. The guy playing Peter is good. The guy playing Andrew is good. Um, the guy playing John the Baptist is great. The guy playing the Centurion is really great. Yeah. Uh, Nicodemus, for this small time he's on screen, very good. Um, John's father is really good. Yeah, they're it's an amazing group of voice actors, and I praise all the voice actors for wanting to be in this film. I don't know if this will help or hurt their careers in the future, but major props to them. They were all really wonderful, and there's some really great animation that goes along with the voice character animation that goes along with the voice animation. So I was actually really, really happy overall with definitely the adults overall. Um, the weakest probably is Judas. That's also just a consequence of them cutting stuff a bit. Um, I think Judas was the other one where it was a little hard, only because clearly they set it up and they don't. It's not like they don't set up Judas at all, but it's really kind of hard to get at the heart of that when you're doing a kids film and you don't want to bring it super down. In fact, Judas is unacknowledged at all after he betrays Jesus in this film. So I think the voice actor for him is not bad, but he was definitely the weakest just in terms of overall character and presentation. But otherwise, and John, I'm cutting slack because it's clearly a kid actor, and he does pretty good. So not great, but good enough. And so yeah, overall, voice acting really, really impressed by. Um, uh, let's see what else that I want to talk about. Uh, I do. There is a through line. There is a clear beginning, middle, and end for the way they're presenting it. And so the more I actually think about it, the more I think it's actually a pretty good film if you watch for some of the details and what they're doing, because they're beginning with John and his understanding of the Messiah and ends with him having an incorrect perception of the Messiah and getting a proper of it understanding of who Jesus is at the end. So I did really like that. It can be a little rushed, again, just due to time, but I think that there's at least something there if you pay attention. And there's some really great moments. Matthew is good, and scene with Matthew's great. The scene with the centurion, um, very good. So there is dramatic stuff that's building up, and they do feed into each other, and they feed into each other naturally, even if that's not exactly how they go in the biblical narrative. Again, I'm willing to grant them license because I think they actually had a beginning, middle, and end, and redemption that they were going for all the characters. This is especially true of Nicodemus and uh, Joseph of Arimathea, which I actually also really like. So in this film, the way they do the high priest is they have four high priests they focus on. They don't show any of the other Sanhedrin, which is fine. You have a short time, and you're not going to do all the major stuff. So they have Caiaphas, another dude who kind of just serves as Caiaphas's lackey and kind of like spokesperson, and then you have Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea, and so you have Caiaphas and the other guy who clearly are opposed. But the other two, like, they have some opposition in the beginning, but you can clearly tell they're kind of like supposed to be like, well, we're not sure. I mean, he is wrong, and John we don't really like, but did he need to die, kind of thing. And so there's definitely a thing where you can see the redemption that's going to happen with both Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea. And this Joseph of Arimathea was actually one of the big surprises for a detail they got right. I thought it was really good how he has a redemption arc, and by the end, he's at the cross, and so then they have him be the one who, of course, gives his tomb to Jesus. So I actually thought that was actually uh, well done because Joseph of Arimathea detail kind of gets left by the wayside, or it's not very clear in most versions. In this one, they make it the most clear it's ever been. So that was like one of the few details clearly where they touched on something that very few do. So I actually liked what they did with Joseph Arimathea. And they have a line also at Christ's crucifixion, which is about Mary's um, heart being pierced. Remember, she brings Jesus to the temple, and prophet tells her he's the Messiah, but also your heart's going to be shattered. And they bring that line up at his crucifixion. Mary repeats it, and I was like, wow. I was actually surprised they included that line as well, because that's a line that rarely ever gets mentioned. So I actually like that as well. Um, so there are some biblical details where you could tell these guys were clearly paying attention to and not just glossing over. And and so any fault with this movie is more it's aimed at kids. It's presenting gospel strictly as possible and concise as possible, and it's doing it within an hour and 24 minutes, which again, not enough time, but still very, very good overall. And so I want to applaud Salvation Poem, Tony and Tom Bancroft, everyone who worked on this film, the voice actors, because overall I think while it may not be my favorite Jesus film, it's going to be up there. It's going to be in the top two or three. There's only two Jesus movies that I would place uh, above this. Well, maybe a couple, but it's in top five definitely. Um, I do really like the original King Kings, even though I have some issues again with the ending. There's some really great stuff in that. I really like if you're looking for another animated film that's even I think that is better. I think the only one I would recommend better for children's animation of Jesus is the stop motion Miracle Maker, which is really good. Has a great cast that's large, but still has probably some of the best performances, and they cover a lot. They cover and go into detail a lot, much more than most versions. So I would say if you're going to watch a Jesus film, go see Miracle Maker as well, and then just watch Gospel of Matthew, the whole 40 and extended hours. But I'm still going to recommend you at least go out and support this film. It may not be the perfect Jesus film, it may not be the best Jesus film, but it's still very good and worth supporting because of the independent nature and the clear love for God and the gospel behind this. It it may not get all the details, and it may um, have some suffer from time limits and basic gospel, but overall still very, very, very good. I would recommend it, especially if you have kids and someone you can bring along with who's an unbeliever who likes animation. If you know someone who's into animation and an unbeliever, I would highly recommend this film to them. All right, there we are. And so that's my review. Um, yeah, and yeah, so there's some basics. I could go into a bit more theological breakdown, which I may at some point again later. But for now, that's my overall more basic thoughts. Hope you go see this film and enjoy it. Bye.